Okay, good evening, and welcome to the 2006 International Republican Institute Freedom Awards dinner. My name is Peter Madigan. I'm the Vice Chairman of the IRI, and we're delighted to have you with us tonight. I want to make two promises to you. First, you'll enjoy a very brisk and interesting program. And secondly, it will be on time, and we will finish quickly because I understand that Grey's Anatomy is on at 9 p.m. We have a full program, very distinguished guests tonight that we're going to hear from, and I know you're all anxious to welcome this year's honorees. So won't you all please join me in welcoming to the Freedom Awards dinner the First Lady of the United States, Mrs. Laura Bush. Please join me in welcoming the President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. The Chairman of the IRI, John McCain. And this year's Freedom Awards dinner chairman, Mr. Ed Whitacre. I can ask you to be seated. Thank you. We're glad so many of you have joined us for the celebration of democracy and to honor two distinguished individuals this evening. First Lady of the United States, Laura Bush, and the President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Thanks to all of you, this evening's event is the single most successful in the history of the IRI. Yes, I did say most successful, in fact, more successful than the honoree that we had last year. And I attribute that greatly to our guests tonight. We can't thank you enough for the support of the people in this room. And as many of you know, IRI Chairman Senator John McCain long ago insisted that the IRI seek private funds to help fulfill our public mission. He encouraged us to reach out to the private sector and to tell the story of the IRI and to ask people like you to support our cause for freedom and democracy throughout the world. We're truly grateful for your support. We thank those of you who are participating for the first time, and we especially thank the large number of companies, firms, individuals who continue to contribute to the IRI and to this dinner once again this year. I encourage you all to take a look at the program tonight for the list of donors who have been so gracious and generous. While we cannot thank you all individually from the podium, I do want to extend our sincere gratitude and special gratitude to a longtime friend, Tim McCone, who so ably assisted his boss, Ed Whitacre, this year's dinner chairman. And I thank you, Tim. The IRI is blessed to have a top-notch, dedicated, passionate staff and volunteers whose sacrifice and hard work make the IRI a truly unique place to be. We're grateful to all of you for everything you do. We especially tonight salute IRI President Lauren Craner, our Executive Vice President Judy Van Rest. Thank you, Lauren and Judy, and the entire IRI team for everything you've done to promote democracy. Now, we want to especially thank this year's dinner chairman, Mr. Ed Whitacre, for his extraordinary efforts to make this evening a success. Ed Whitacre is the chairman of the board and CEO of AT&T, one of the world's largest telecommunications companies, and the largest in the U.S. Ed began his career with Southwestern Bell as a facility engineer in Lubbock, Texas. He advanced through a series of executive assignments, and he must have done good. because in 1988 he was made the president and COO of Southwestern Bell. Less than 2 years later, he became the SBC chairman and CEO, and today retains the same position as head of the merged SBC AT&T Corporation. He's active in community affairs as the chairman of AT&T, and that includes the Boy Scouts of America, Texas Tech University, and the United Way. He's a great leader in the business community and was named one of the top 25 executives of the year by Business Week. Ed has received more civic and business achievement awards than I dare list, and lucky for us, he's unleashed those same skills tonight. Ed has been burning up the AT&T phone lines to produce our most successful IRI dinner ever. So, ladies and gentlemen, turn off your cell phones and join me in welcoming this year's dinner chairman, Mr. Ed Whitaker.
If Peter said, turn off your cell phones, it's okay with me if you turn them on. So don't want you to miss anything. Thank you very much, Peter. It's an honor to be here this evening, and welcome to all of you. I'd like to thank everyone whose support made this event such a success. When the opportunity arose for me to help the International Republican Institute by serving as dinner chairman, I immediately accepted. You know, at a time when the blessings of living in a free and open society are being challenged around the world as never before, IRI is out there. While some are trying to shroud the world in darkness, IRI is lighting a path toward freedom and democracy for people everywhere. There is no more urgent work to be done. It is a privilege to share this evening with such deserving honorees. I would like to extend my congratulations to the President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and to the First Lady of the United States, Laura Bush. You know, they say that we Texans like to brag a little, and I can't deny that tonight. But I'm not exaggerating when I say that everyone in Texas is very proud of Laura Bush. I have a difficult assignment tonight, introducing Senator McCain to a Washington audience is like explaining rocket science to a group of NASA engineers. You can talk a long time and still not tell them anything new. But this much is worth repeating. He is a patriot in the fullest sense of the word. His life is a story of commitment to the same ideals that IRI works so hard to support. He is an American hero, and it's my pleasure to introduce him now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator John McCain.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed. Thank you for your kind introduction. Thank you all for being here. Each year, as was mentioned, we have a larger and larger turnout, and I still think that's because this is the only dinner in town where we guarantee you to have you out by 9 p.m. So we thank you. On behalf of IRI, I'd like to express our profound thanks to Ed Whitaker for AT&T's leadership on this year's IRI Freedom Dinner. This is, as Peter mentioned, our most successful dinner, and it's a great deal of credit for this success goes to Ed and his team. I'd like to express thanks also to those who have chaired the past dinners and who continue to support IRI so generously, including FedEx, the New York Stock Exchange, and Mike Armstrong, who is with us tonight. Thank you to Peter Madigan, as always, and welcome to all of our guests, including those who have joined us from Afghanistan, Guatemala, Jordan, and Mongolia. And also welcome, of course, to our 2 Freedom Award honorees. Laura Bush's tenure as First Lady has become synonymous with issues of global concern. From education to health care, from women's rights to democracy, Mrs. Bush has become the face of America's commitment to the developing world, highlighting our country's efforts to end pandemic diseases like malaria and HIV/AIDS. In fact, just yesterday, she announced a public-private partnership between the United States government and several foundations and corporations to bring clean water to 10 million Africans by the year 2010. Marvelous. Thank you, Mrs. Bush. And in her extensive travels, Mrs. Bush has seen firsthand the struggles of brave women around the world to build democracies in lands where it is lacking. In Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, Central and South America, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East, Mrs. Bush has met with women leaders and spoken about the need to empower women. The First Lady has spoken frequently about what she calls the pillars of democracy, including free press and free speech, and she has urged democracy activities to press for these values. Mrs. Bush has stressed education and women's participation in the economic and political life of their countries as keys to fostering civic participation in new democracies. And she has noted that the future of young democracies depends on literate, educated, and healthy children, the true leaders of tomorrow. To further the positive linkage between education and democracy, Mrs. Bush earlier this week hosted the White House Conference on Global Literacy in New York. While there, she also hosted a discussion aimed at building support for a Security Council resolution that would address the terrible, terrible ongoing situation in Burma. It's fitting that Laura Bush, an individual so committed to freedom and democracy, would take on the cause of a country where the situation is so bleak. Aung San Suu Kyi herself received IRI's Freedom Award in 1999. Tragically, she was not able to be here to accept it because of the thugs that continue to keep her under house arrest in Rangoon. That's not the First Lady's only connection to the International Republican Institute. Earlier this year, she led the U.S. delegation to the presidential inauguration of our other honoree tonight, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and last year she hosted a meeting of women activists from around the world at the State Department. This meeting provided the inspiration for IRI's Women's Democracy Network, which aims to provide female activists with opportunities to share their experiences, exchange ideas, and engage in leadership training. Laura Bush is perhaps America's greatest ambassador, an envoy to the world, and a champion of global democracy. May I say I've had the great honor and privilege over time to get to know the President and Mrs. Bush. They're two of the finest, most wonderful, most dedicated people that I've ever had the privilege and honor to know. And I'd like to, at this time, introduce to you this evening's honoree, Mrs. Laura Bush, First Lady of the United States of America.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator McCain, for your very nice introduction, too. Thank you all. Thank you, Senator McCain. Thank you for your service to our country and for the important work you're doing through the International Republican Institute. I want to recognize President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the President of Liberia. I'm so thrilled to be here with you tonight. Mr. Peter Madigan, the IRI Vice Chairman, and Mr. Lauren Craner, the IRI President. And, of course, as the President calls him, Big Ed Whitaker from Texas, the Chairman of the dinner. Thank you very much, Ed and Linda, for the great work you've done on tonight's dinner. Ambassadors, members of Congress, and distinguished guests, I'm honored to be with you tonight and to receive this year's IRI Freedom Award. Thank you all very much. For 2 decades, the International Republican Institute has worked with the people of many nations to help develop the democratic institutions upon which good governments are built. Through youth education initiatives, IRI trains the next generation of democratic leaders. By strengthening political parties and civic organizations, IRI helps societies foster debate and the free exchange of ideas. And through the Women's Democracy Network, IRI brings together women leaders from around the world so they can help more women participate in the political process. I'd like to thank the Institute for this important work. Tonight, I'm honored to receive IRI's Freedom Award with one of the world's most distinguished women leaders, Liberia's President, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. President Johnson Sirleaf is a respected economist, an accomplished public servant, and an amazing woman. Through her service as a Liberian cabinet minister in the 1970s, as a senior UN administrator in the 1990s, and now as her country's president, President Johnson Sirleaf has always been deeply devoted to her country. Her dedication to Liberia has never diminished, not even in the face of persecution. When she opposed the military rule of Samuel Doe, President Johnson Sirleaf was imprisoned and eventually had to flee her country. Yet during all her years in exile, she never lost her love of freedom and her commitment to restoring the democracy in Liberia. Liberia and the United States have a very special and close relationship, a relationship that dates back to Liberia's founding by freed slaves from the United States. For many years, Liberia flourished as one of the most successful countries in Africa before their long and devastating civil war. During the war, the United States was one of the few nations that maintained a diplomatic presence because we wanted to work with Liberians so they could return to their democratic ideals. Now, the United States stands with President Johnson Sirleaf and the people of Liberia as they rebuild their country. And I encourage the IRI to dedicate your time, energy, and resources to the rebuilding of Liberia. I'm privileged to have represented the United States at President Johnson Sirleaf's inauguration in January. At the ceremony in Monrovia, she delivered a moving address that spoke directly to the women of Liberia, of Africa, and of the world. President Johnson Sirleaf is the first woman ever elected president in Africa, and women around the world are watching her. They're proud of her. And they have every reason to be. President Johnson Sirleaf is a terrific example of the power of education and of why it's important to educate women and girls and to improve opportunities for women in Africa and around the world. President Johnson Sirleaf is where she is today because of her hard work, her faith in democracy, and her belief in the power of education. She's a role model for women and girls everywhere, and she's an inspiration to everyone who believes in free societies. President Johnson Sirleaf, I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. To receive this award with you is such an honor. Thank you to IRI for honoring President Johnson Sirleaf and me, and thank you for your terrific work to promote democracy and freedom. Thank you all very much.
Please enjoy your meal. To bring your attention back to the podium, I want to introduce now great friend and somebody who's done an outstanding job at the International Republican Institute, Lauren Craner, the president of the IRI.
Thank you very much, Peter. I want to welcome all of you to IRI's 2006 Freedom Dinner. We're honored this evening to be joined by the First Lady of the United States and the President of Liberia. By action and example, both are encouraging democracy around the world, and we at IRI are deeply grateful for their hard work to advance liberty, particularly liberty for women. As Mrs. Bush has stated, no society can prosper if half its population is not allowed to contribute to its progress. Well, over the last 2 years, as you heard a little earlier, IRI, with Executive Vice President Judy Van Rest as the driving force, has undertaken a focused effort to advance the role of women in building their country's democracies. Now, I could tell you all about IRI's Women's Democracy Network, but I think you'll best understand what we're trying to achieve if I introduce you to 4 of those involved in the Women's Democracy Network. Of all nations, the most stark difference for women over the past 5 years has been in Afghanistan, a country liberated by this president in 2001. But as President Bush noted at last year's IRI dinner, the hard work of building democracy comes after freedom begins. In Afghanistan, women like Saima Hugiani, please stand, Saima. Women like Saima now have the task of building democracy. Forced by civil war to flee Kabul University in 1993, Saima began teaching at a school for girls in her native province of Nangarhar. When the Taliban banned education for girls, Saima courageously continued teaching them in her own home. After the 2001 liberation, she attended the Loya Jirga that restarted Afghanistan's democratic institutions. She worked with the new Human Rights Commission, and she assisted President Karzai's campaign. In 2005, she ran for Parliament as an independent, which was when IRI first crossed paths with her. As an MP, she often expresses her strong optimism in her country's future, while saying that women will have to continue to struggle until they become equal. IRI continues to work with Saima through our assistance to a coalition of independent parliamentarians. They and Saima are proving to be a force for a forward-looking Afghanistan. Saima, please stand again. We want to thank you for all you are doing. Saima, thank you for bringing democracy to Afghanistan. Maria Elena Cruz Urrutia. Maria Elena was the only woman on Guatemala's city council when she was elected in 2001. Now a leader in her political party, she began attending IRI seminars and training sessions in 2000 and credits IRI with encouraging her to run for office. She currently serves as the liaison between Guatemala's City Council and the country's federal government and is the founder and president of Guatemala's Association for Women in Municipal Government. In between all of that, she also finds time to train fellow Guatemalans in IRI programs. Maria Elena, thank you for bringing democracy to Guatemala. Bonzrak Delgarma and IRI first worked together in 1996 when she ran for and won a seat in Mongolia's parliament. An attorney, she chaired her parliament's Human Rights Committee and was General Secretary of Mongolia's Democratic Party. She remains active in the party, but now chairs the multi-partisan Partnership of Women in Politics and Government, which promotes the candidacies of women and their leadership in civil society. Delgarma, thank you for bringing democracy to Mongolia. Rana Hajia is one of Jordan's most prominent women leaders. From 2003 until earlier this year, she was the appointed mayor of Al-Hassa in southern Jordan, where she solved a number of long-standing environmental problems. She's been instrumental in encouraging other Jordanian women to become more politically active. She plans to seek elected office and credits IRI with helping her make the decision to run. Rana, thank you for bringing democracy to Jordan. I'm sometimes asked why I think America can export democracy. When you meet people like Saima and Mary Elena and Delgarma and Rana, and tonight for me a big thrill, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, you realize we don't need to export democracy. The desire for freedom is universal. All we need to do is assist brave women and men as they build their democracies. IRI is able to assist because of the generosity of everyone here tonight. Our most innovative programs are paid for with private funds. As you heard earlier from my friend Peter Madigan, this evening is the most successful fundraiser in IRI's history, and I want to thank all of you. Your generosity ensures that IRI can continue our cutting-edge efforts to help brave men and women build their own democracies. In all of these endeavors, we are led by Senator John McCain. Whether flying off Cuba during the missile crisis, keeping faith with his fellow aviators in Hanoi, or standing up for what's right in the United States Senate, John McCain's life story is about freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator John McCain.
Thank you very much. Again, Lauren. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you all. Please. It's my honor to present the second of our 2006 IRI Freedom Awards to President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. It's a singular honor. Our First Lady already described to you her many accomplishments and her tremendous work on behalf of freedom and democracy. When she was a small girl growing up in the countryside, swimming and fishing, she told our Congress, with twine made from palm trees, no one would have picked her out as the future president of our country. This may be true, but few have worked harder over a longer period for the freedom of their country. President Johnson Sirleaf has returned to Liberia not once, but 4 times in what has become a lifelong effort to build a better homeland. Educated in Monrovia, Ms. Johnson Sirleaf went to college in Wisconsin before returning home to work for then President William Tubman. Tubman had ruled as a dictator for 25 years when in 1969, Mrs. Johnson Sirleaf publicly labeled her country a kleptocracy. A friend wisely suggested that she resume her studies outside the country. She studied economics in Colorado and earned a master's in public administration from Harvard before returning to Liberia for a second time, rising to become Minister of Finance. After Samuel Doe launched his successful coup in 1980, she was forced into exile again, but she was not to be denied in her efforts to return. She went back to Liberia in 1985 in order to launch her candidacy for the National Senate. Upon arrival, she was arrested and was freed only when the United States Congress threatened to cut off assistance to Liberia. While on the campaign trail, she criticized Samuel Doe's rule, and her outspokenness landed her in jail again. She later described these as the worst moments of her life and said that through the grace of Almighty God and the mercy of others, I escaped and found refuge in the United States. As war raged in her homeland over the next 12 years, Ms. Johnson Sirleaf worked as an economist and for a time headed the United Nations Development Program's Africa Bureau. While she initially sponsored Charles Taylor's rebellion against the Samuel Doe regime, Ms. Johnson Sirleaf quickly became disillusioned by his corrupt and brutal rule. In 1997, she returned home for the fourth time in order to challenge Taylor in the presidential elections. She lost that election, but remained in Liberia to work on governance and reform issues. Last year, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, as you know, ran for president for the second time with an unforgettable campaign slogan, quote, "All the men have failed Liberia, let's try a woman." Now known as Africa's Iron Woman, President Johnson Sirleaf has reduced corruption, increased government revenue, restored relations with international leaders, and launched a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. After so many years of sorrow and tragedy, the people of Liberia have a leader in whom they can take great pride. President Johnson Sirleaf, you inspire women and girls around the world with your lifelong quest to bring democracy to your country. You move all Americans to greater courage and commitment to the cause of democracy. You have our deep gratitude for all you have done and admiration for all you are. It's my great honor to introduce to you the great and wonderful President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, our Freedom Awardee.
Thank you very much. First Lady Laura Bush, Senator McCain, Mr. Kramer, Chairman Whitaker, members of Congress, members of the administration, special guests, so many long-term friends. Let me say how honored I am, how very pleased to be here. A special honor to be able to share this event with the First Lady, Mrs. Bush. She has been so wonderful. We can't say enough for what she has done in Africa, for the women, for the children. This honor is so well deserved, and I'm just humbled to be here with you. Many of you may know Liberia during a period of 140 years when we had stability. Our country was, we thought, moving on the path toward fulfilling its development agenda. We even, as one of the first independent states in Africa, symbolized this exceptional state by having a Lone Star flag. You may recall, Mrs. Bush, we said that there was some similarity with Texas. But it was clear upon the coup d'etat in 1980 that the 140 years of stability had masked the underlying tensions the failure of successive governments to breach the long-standing divide within the population, and also to bring development to the people, particularly education. And so those years of calm, disguised peace and stability were shattered by the coup d'etat. And that set in train 25 years of decline. 14 of those 25 years, chaos, death, destruction. Many young people denied their future because they were conscripted into armies, into warring factions. That continued well during the period so well described by Senator McCain of going back and forth in exile, working with other compatriots to try to bring some sensibility, some normalcy to our country. And it wasn't until 2003 that one might say the U.S., having always been with Liberia throughout its long years, that President Bush took a stand against the tyrannical regime of President Taylor and said, enough is enough. The Liberian people have suffered enough, and it's time. It's time to bring a change, time to do something else. The Liberian people will always be grateful for this very strong and principled stand taken by President Bush, because that led to the change that brought us 2 years of transition and then led us to the 2005 elections. IRI was particularly active in promoting these elections. Very quickly, an office was established. They did workshops. They brought political groups together. They worked with the media. They educated, they instructed, they supported, they assisted the process. And after 2 rounds of elections in October and November, Liberia finally did the right thing. They elected me. And with that elections come hope by our people, hope to redress the many years of neglect, hope to reclaim the future, hope to renew our nation. But it's a hope not just for me or for Liberia. It's also a hope for our continent because of what I symbolize, because of the expectations and the anticipation that I represent on behalf of African women. And so for them, we must make Liberia succeed. And so our government has started by launching our development agenda on 4 pillars. The first is to consolidate peace and stability. And we've taken some bold moves in this regard. We've dismantled an entire army. We've dislodged a police force, and we've sent them all into training to make sure that they're professionalized, they're educated, that not only protect the geographic integrity of the nation and protect people, but that they also know that their role is not to repress, but to assist. The U.S. is a major partner to us in the restructuring of our security forces, and the United Nations Peacekeeping Force provide essentially the safety while we reconstruct our security sector. The next pillar is our economic revitalization. And on that, we're putting in place the policies that will enable us to create the environment to attract private capital and private investment. We've begun a program with the IMF that will enable us to tackle our debt. We've begun the process. We've already gained a general system of preferences, and we want to qualify for AGOA and the other kinds of interventions that will enable us to expand our potential. Third pillar is infrastructure, and there, perhaps our most important, rehabilitating our social and economic infrastructure. We've put education at the center of our development agenda because that's where we have to start if we are going to build a national capacity to be able to undertake all the other ambitious programs that we would like to do. And so primary, universal primary free education is a primary goal, to be able to take our children off the streets and get them back into school, to be able to help those parents who are not able, who cannot afford to pay the tuition to send their children to school. So we've started to rehabilitate our schools all over the country. The same goes for other social infrastructure, our clinics and hospitals, all of which have been destroyed over the years, to get them back so we can get our displaced population and our refugee population back into their communities where they can enjoy the basics. Our road system, our telecommunication system, and the infrastructure, things that are so vital for creating the environment for free enterprise. We're working to restore all of those. And the last pillar is governance, ensuring the things that IRI has been working on, that we do maintain democracy, the basic freedoms, the respect for human rights, that our judicial system will enable people to have proper recourse, that we will have the proper balancing of power, and we've worked with your Congress in trying to ensure that our legislature helps to balance the executive. And so in all of these areas, we have made much progress with the support of our partners, because the 4 pillars rest on our ability to attract and maintain strategic partnerships, partnership within the country, partnership between government and non-governmental organizations, partnership between government and the business sector, and then partnerships between our country and its partners. And would like to thank all of you who have been represented in some of these partnerships and have worked with us. If someone were to ask me, why should the U.S. support Liberia? After all, it's a small country, 3.2 million people, the west coast of Africa. I'd like to offer a few things that you might consider. Because we're a small country, we are well endowed by nature in our natural resources, mineral resources, forest resources, agricultural resources, water resources, and a small population that enables us to address poverty and enables us to be prosperous if we can put those resources to work for the good of the people. The other reason is our long tenured and good relationship with the United States from our very beginnings until now. We've enjoyed that friendship. And even though we say that we know, today we take primary responsibility for our development, and we must do that. And we also say that we want to be self-reliant, we want to be self-sufficient. We want to make sure that in these strategic partnerships there's a mutuality in benefits and mutuality in respect. And so, but we think that with all of that, the U.S. has a great partner to us, and there's a good reason to maintain those relationships as we begin to explore those mutual benefits. Another reason we think is that The U.S. has already made a major investment in Liberia's processes of change and in Liberia's transition from the difficult days to the hope and promise of the future. And we believe that the return on that investment will come when this government succeeds in carrying out its development agenda. We also believe that Liberia has the potential to be a success story in Africa, to demonstrate that you can move a country from conflict and chaos into prosperity, into democracy, into a strong voice for freedom, in being able to be a leader in Africa, in promoting all of these ideals for which our two countries have stood for so many years. And if there's a final reason for the U.S. to be able to support Liberia in its effort to succeed, may I suggest that this one-woman success will make a big difference in the lives of African women. We are determined as a people to embrace the process of renewal. We are committed as a people to build a new Liberia out of a past of chaos and destruction into a future of promise and a future of hope. As I said at our inauguration, in which Mrs. Bush participated, one of the greatest joys we get is to make our children smile again. And those smiles are beginning to show as they see for the first time that there is hope, that their lives can be better, that they can be educated, they can enjoy better medical services, they can reach for their potential in a land with a government that responds to their needs. I want to thank all of you for your contribution to where Liberia is today as we recommit to make sure that the return on your investment will be high indeed. God bless you.
Well, it's 8:30 and Senator McCain said 9 o'clock, so I've got a couple of speeches I thought I'd give. But on behalf of the Board of Directors of the IRI, thank you, Mrs. Bush, President Johnson Sirleaf, and Senator McCain. If you could remain standing in your place for 1 second, I just want to tell you two quick housekeeping things. We want to invite you to enjoy some coffee and dessert out in the foyer area. We didn't cut it short this year. We do have dessert, and I know some people were wondering about that. I do want to just say two last things. Thank you very much for what you did this year, coming and helping. And we've set a high bar for the next year, but I think you heard tonight how important the IRI is to many, many people around the globe. And we remain committed to assist all of those who ask and are in need. And so again, on behalf of the IRI Board of Directors, thank you very much. This concludes tonight's program. God bless and have a safe trip home.